Okay, I'm good. Good evening. We are a little behind schedule here. Reverend Reed screaming, technical difficulties, you know the deal. But if you are here, I'm excited to have you here. If you are coming from our Abundant Marriage Instagram, welcome. Today is the day. Thursdays at 8 p.m. is the day that you and I, we just talk. We talk about how we can reroute our families. And so, if you're here, I want you to take this time, do me a favor, help us out, because together we want to create a community and how our character is made up of either good habits or bad habits. We're either going to become slaves to bad habits or slaves to good habits. And one of the habits that we do here at the ranch as a family is that we like to go on morning and evening walks with our boys. And it's proven to be such a great experience, and we're creating so many memories during our walks. And another habit that I want you to create in your family is making sure that you are here with us every Thursday at 8 p.m. Not only does this enrich my marriage, not only does it give Renee helpful tips, and usually when I want to tell him something in a passive-aggressive way, I'll just include it in one of, these talks. But also, you ask your questions, you send your comments, you can send me a private message in your... So anyways, right now, please do me a favor and start sharing this. Maybe you're not married, right? Maybe you're engaged, or maybe you're dating, or maybe there's no one in the near future. However, you might have an uncle, an aunt, a friend, a cousin, maybe it's your own parents. And if they're struggling in their marriage, or maybe they're just trying to take their marriage one step further, do them a favor and share, because we're going to get started here very soon. If you've been accompanying us in our Abundant Marriage account, you know that this is going to be the account now that we're going to be having these conversations. And so, as I always like to say, grab your papers, your pens, get yourself comfortable, grab something to drink, take lots of notes, because here we don't want to just be hearers, we want to be doers. And whatever you hear tonight, apply it in your marriage. And then get back to me, because I would love to know the changes you are seeing. Okay? And so tonight I think we entitled it, Conflict Can Create Greater Connection. Something like that, right, Renee? Conflict can create greater connection in your relationship. Now look, if you are married, and if you are married to a husband, you know that men, they will avoid conflict at all and any cost. At all and any cost, men will avoid conflict. And oh man, I think it's hilarious, because you have a bunch of men who come to see me and they say, Amanda, I just don't know what to do with myself when my wife starts to cry. And I said, well, do you notice when she's upset? And some of them say, I have no idea. And maybe it's because they have selective attention when it comes to emotions, because they just don't know how to handle it. They just don't know how to deal with it. Or maybe it's they do notice, but they pretend that they don't notice. Why? Because they just don't want to go there. Why? Because they hate conflict and they will avoid it at all costs. However, tonight, I don't want you to avoid conflict. Now, there are specific ways to go about conflict so that after conflict, or during conflict, during those arguments and those disagreements, if you would just stick with it, you will see that it can create closeness and intimacy in your relationship, in your marriage. And so I want to tell you a little story. I think Renee's going to try to set me up so that I can see those of you who are coming in, so I can say hello, so that we can stay connected. And please send me your questions and I will answer it throughout. And if you agree with something I said, send me your thumbs up, send your likes, whatever. And if I don't get to your question now, I will surely get to it later. Our phones are so crazy right now. Renee's light is on his phone right in my eyeball, and we can't figure out why his light keeps turning on. But here we go. I'm going to tell you a story, and this is a story that actually happened this past Sunday, okay? This past Sunday, this story happens. And so, what's going on here with the I Believe Ranch, right? The I Believe Ranch, where we live, you can follow it there. It's called I Believe Ministries, Inc. You can follow the Instagram account for that. Well, in the nonprofit, we are currently under construction, right? And we are creating a pavilion, which is going to have an outdoor bathroom, an outdoor shower, a place that we can get together with those who come to worship at I Believe Ranch. We do it Saturdays evenings, every other Saturday from about 4 to 10. Anyways, we had a few of the I Believe men come to the done by January. And so all these men are working and, you know, they're putting pillars into the ground. They have to put 10 heavy pillars into the ground. And these holes, I mean, I was fully able to go inside this hole. That's how deep this hole, I mean, I'm only 5'1", maybe on a good day, but it was a deep hole, okay? And so here are all these men, and they're sweating, and they're having fun, and they're, you know, excited about what God is doing in the nonprofit. And sure enough, when I come along, they all think it's funny to start asking me couple questions or therapy questions, like they say. But then I saw something interesting happen, and I just couldn't help myself, right? I have friends and family who says, whenever you're with us, are you diagnosing us? Are you? Of course not, but of course yes, right? I can't help myself. And so I go out there, and I'm with my mom, and my twin boys, River and Reed. And my mom looks to my dad, because my dad is always in a rush, okay? But he's on an extra rush. And my mom goes, Jacob, what are you rushing? He's like, oh, I gotta go. And she goes, well, where are you going? And he ignores the question. And so if you ask a question and the question is ignored, you're going to what? You're going to ask the question again. And so now I see my dad. He starts to sweat, and he shouldn't be sweating because it's actually kind of chilly outside. So she asks him again, well, Jacob, where are you going? And he ignores the question. In this moment, right? My wheels are just turning, and I'm watching this conversation take place. I'm watching my mother and my father go back and forth. And she asks about 3 to 4 times until finally she just gives up, because she realizes that she's not getting a response, right? She realizes that she's not getting a response. Very good. I don't think my mom is here right now. So she won't know that I'm talking about her and my dad. Right? Don't tell her either. And so anyways, she asks a few times, and then I look at my dad, and in that moment, I just know exactly where he's going, right? I mean, I'm not a mind reader or anything, but I know what he's up to. And so I look at him and I say, I know where you're going. And when I say that, just absolute terror, panic, right? Eyeballs are coming out of its socket, and he is just like, she's on to me. And when I look at him and I say, I know where you're going, he's just like, right? Like he's signaling me, he's telling me no, he's looking at me like I'm going to kill you, like don't take any step further. But I love conflict, and I don't love conflict because I like people arguing and fighting. No. But I know what conflict can result if we do it correctly. And so I said, oh no, I'm sorry, man. I'm throwing you under the bus, but for a great reason. And obviously at first, right, he didn't really like it. And so I said, I know where you're going. I said, you're going to Enoch's house, that's our friend's house. And I said, you're going to buy chickens, aren't you? And he was just like, oh my goodness, right? My daughter reads brains, then my daughter reads minds. And he just looks at me and he just like, oh. And my mom says, wait, you're going where? Where are you going? You're going to go buy chickens, Jacob? What do you mean you're going to go buy chickens? We discussed, and then they start, right? And then conflict starts to happen. Argument starts to happen. Well, my dad, because he runs from conflict like Satan runs from the cross, right? he sort of like walks away and he murmurs under his breath, like, oh, like, Amanda, why did you just do that, right? Why did you just get involved? Whatever. I couldn't even understand what he was saying. And so here it's set, right? I caused conflict. And he came and he says, you caused conflict. I was like, I didn't cause conflict. I said, Dad, what were you possibly going to do? I said, were you going to create an underground, what's called, how do you say galinheiro in English? Chicken coop, right? Yeah. I was like, galinheiro in Portuguese is chicken coop. I said, what are you going to do? I said, are you going to, huh?
Your mom's on.
Oh, my mom's on. Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, she missed most of it. Okay. And so I said, Dad, what are you going to, I said, I caused conflict. I said, Dad, you're trying to avoid conflict. It's very short term. It's very temporary what you're doing. I said, because you're going to go get these chickens, And then what are you going to do? You're going to create an underground railroad for these chickens, an underground chicken coop where you're going to hide 15 chickens. I said, what in the world? And I said, she's going to get more upset because you're just going to show up and, I mean, she's going to say, well, how did these chickens get here? It's not going to make any sense. I said, you're going to make her more angry. I said, I didn't cause conflict. I said, you're going to make matters worse. Why didn't you just have a conversation? Why didn't you talk about it? Well, the same thing, right? Men avoid conflict at all costs, even if it doesn't make any reasonable sense. Because in my head, I was like, listen, it's only a matter of time before she finds out you can't hide chickens, man. And so we had this conversation, and he wasn't able to go that evening. Oh, because, right, I caused conflict. And so the next day he goes and he gets these 15 chickens. And he comes home with these 15 chickens. And so I then go and I have a conversation with my father. And I explain to him, I say, listen, Dad. I said, look, we have to be able to have conversations. I said, listen, I know you don't want Mom to get angry. I know you don't want Mom to get mad. I said, but Dad, do you understand that if you just show up with chickens, she's going to feel like you manipulated, like you lied, like you weren't honest, like you didn't have a conversation about it? Oh, so the question is, did your mom say she didn't want any more chickens? And so, stay with the story because it's about to get good, and I'm going to answer that question in just a second. So look, I explained to my father, I tried to have him understand, and for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. Sometimes people have a tough past, right? And my father had a very difficult upbringing. He saw really bad arguments and really bad conflict. He's never seen that conflict can bring us closer together because his family wasn't able to do it. If anything, they just got angry, upset, closed the doors, never spoke to each other ever again. But I was trying to show him how listen, this can bring closeness to your relationship. Trust me on this one. And so, okay, I tell him this whole spiel, and he listens. Now, here's the amazing thing. It is important that you and I cultivate what is called emotional intelligence in our relationships and in our marriages. It's important that we have emotional intimacy is going to get answered. I'm going to detour to define emotional intelligence for 1 second. So the good thing about emotional intelligence is that it can be cultivated and it can be learned, meaning with the right environment, you can learn to have emotional intelligence. It's not static, and it can be learned by anyone to the person's own benefit and to the benefit of your relationships. Emotional intelligence is a good thing. So we learn all about IQ, right? You're going to pass your SATs or your FCATs. And emotional intelligence is where it's at. It helps us understand our emotions, know and observe the emotions of others, and we need to figure this emotion stuff out in order for us to have healthy, happy, and abundant relationships and marriages. Now, Professor says that emotional intelligence is the ability, look at this, to accurately perceive your own and others' emotions. Do you see how necessary this is? He says it's to understand the signals that emotions send about relationships and to manage your own and others' emotions. So this is so incredibly important because unfortunately we have a lot of low emotional intelligence going on in our relationships, and sometimes the problem is us. Why is emotional intelligence a matter? Okay, why is it so important? Why is it so necessary? Well, it's important because it helps us be aware and control our own emotions, to understand them, to manage them, to use them appropriately in any given situation. Emotional intelligence is important because, well, it helps you keep your temper under control when you're faced with frustrating or angering situations. Emotional intelligence is incredibly important. Not only that, but in Dr. John Gottman, he talks a lot about how emotional intelligence increases our capacity to empathize. What is empathy? Well, empathy is your ability to put yourself in Renee's shoes, and Renee's constantly having to put himself in my shoes. Emotional intelligence increases our capacity to empathize, to understand. But as I told you, emotional intelligence, if you feel like, oh man, I have no control over my emotions, I need help with my emotions, and usually emotional intelligence, women have a higher emotional intelligence than men. But men, the good news is that this thing can be learned. of my dad. And here we go, Jessica, your question is about to be answered. You know, my father is a very humble man. He grew up very poor, and he grew up with people who had low emotional intelligence. And again, these things are observed, they are seen, they are passed on. And while they can be learned, they were not taught to him. And so he's almost in an uphill battle here, whereas my mom, she has very high emotional intelligence. And so sometimes we could see sort of a divide. But praise be to God that this can be learned. And again, my mother has to be willing to help my father, and my father has to be willing to learn. When two people are intentional about loving each other and choose to love each other, when they're intentional about forming better habits, all things are possible to those who believe. And so what happens is, look at this, Jessica. My mom didn't have a problem with the chickens. My mom had a problem because we had chickens, but these chickens unfortunately died. An intruder came in, okay? We don't know if it was a bobcat. We don't know if it was a raccoon. Some animal came in and killed our chickens. And so my mom doesn't have a problem with chickens. My mom has a problem that right now the chicken coop, the setup that we have, is not the best to protect the dang chickens. And so, look at this. The chickens were okay, but she just wanted for him to first fix the chicken coop so that it would provide a safe home for our chickens. And so I explained this to my father. Well, right now, use this opportunity for you to take some notes, okay? What I want you to do whenever you have these types of situations, and once you've practiced it enough, once it has created a habit, Renee and I can do this with each other without having to write it down, but at first, write it down. Grab a piece of paper. And so right now, right, my mom and my dad, it was the whole chicken coop ordeal, the chickens. He wanted chickens, she didn't want chickens yet. And so the question I first asked was, okay, Mom, what are you inflexible with versus what are you flexible with? And so she says, well, something that I am inflexible with is that I am not cleaning up chicken poop. Okay, well, she doesn't have to. Just listen, Jacob, I don't care. I will not clean up chicken poop. Okay, she doesn't want to do that. I said, okay, great. Dad, what are you inflexible with? My dad says, I'm inflexible that I want to have chickens. I want to have them. I like chicken eggs. I like fresh, organic, whatever, chicken eggs, and I need to have my chicken eggs. Okay, great. I think I lost you guys here, and he's going to turn it back on.
Battery.
Oh, the battery. On who? Oh, the battery. The battery died. I can't see y'all's comments, but Renee's going to plug us in. And so, look. And so I said, okay, Mom, you are inflexible in cleaning up chicken poop, but what are you flexible in? She's like, well, I'm flexible in having chickens. However, I am inflexible in that it can't be with this setup. We need to create, a better home so that we don't keep losing these chickens. And my father says, okay, well, while I am inflexible in that I want to have chickens, I am flexible in creating a better home for these chickens. Well, here's the thing. Look at what happens. And so we sort of go back and forth with these things. My father has already bought these chickens, okay? So these chickens are already coming home. And now, yes, he didn't tell my mom. They didn't have a conversation about it, which he should have. He was wrong. He done messed up. But I said, okay, Mom, let's give him another chance here. There's no point in crying over spilt milk. It happened, and hopefully he has learned his lesson. Hopefully through this experience he has increased emotional intelligence. Being able to observe his emotions, how to deal with them, how to manage them, and seeing and managing your emotions. Well, this is what happens. The next day, oh my dad. I always say, listen, our parents are like grown-up children. And listen, I'm a parent too, okay? River and Reed are going to say the same about me. They're going to see me and Renee bickering and fighting about nonsense, and they're going to say, oh gosh, look, there's Mom and Dad again. And so look at what happened. The next day, my dad, we have a little go-kart that we drive around the property, and it's me, my mom, River and Reed. And we drive around to where his shop is. His carpentry shop is right here on the ranch, and it's great because, the boys love having Grandma and Grandpa. And so we go up there, and my dad comes, and he starts to talk in a way that I know he's about to ask something. He wants something, okay? and he's explaining how he got a really good deal on these chickens because these chickens already produce eggs, and typically it's $25 a chicken, but he found it for $15. This whole thing, and in my head I'm like, okay, what do you want, right? What do you want? And so he goes and he says, listen, what do I want? He says, well, I bought 15 chickens, but I want 15 more chickens. Do you hear this, man, Jessica? I just finally convinced my mom, to not kill him about the 15 chickens he has without fixing the chicken coop, and now this man is trying to say, I want 15 more chickens. I said, you have got to be kidding me. He said, but listen, it's a really, really good deal, and if I don't get this deal now, I'm going to lose the opportunity because it's going to be this much money versus this much money. My mom is just listening and listening. So my mom says, well, now we have to try to reach a compromise. But she's like, well, Jacob, I really want you to fix this chicken coop. He says, oh, but the chicken coop is going to be so much more expensive for me to do. I can already, buy these chickens, and I can sell some eggs to my friends. And he's just, he's trying to figure out what he's going to do because he wants these chickens. Yes?
Bijou says, I have nothing to do with the chickens.
Yeah, Bijou, you're a little punk. Bijou actually bought 2 of the chickens. He helped out in the conflict, okay? But you better be happy because the conflict ended up great, and you're going to see how. And so they're going back and forth, and I'm just sitting there, right? I'm just watching. I'm like, come on, we trained this, right? It's like, I'm so proud of my parents because they're doing this. My father's not running away from conflict, and here's a man who grew up with so much conflict in his house, again, that he wants nothing to do with conflict. But I'm watching my father, and I'm saying, emotional intelligence can be learned. It can be cultivated if people are willing, if people are humble, if people are willing to learn. And, my dad is such a humble guy. He could be like, man, get out of here. You're my kid. But no, my dad is so humble. And that's one of the greatest things that I admire about this man. And so I'm watching my parents go back and forth, and I'm just praying, come on, God, show them that conflict can create greater connection in their marriage. And they're doing it. They're going back and forth. And now I'm sort of like the mediator. I'm like, well, Dad, what about this? Well, Mom, where can you compromise? We already got the 15 chickens, and I would really, really just love if you could just fix the chicken coop before we got 15 more chickens. And, well, like any good compromise, she wants some and she lost some, and he wants some and he lost some. He already got his 15 chickens. I said, listen, man, you already got your 15 chickens. Stay quiet, right? And she got the fact that he was not going to have 15 more. He was not going to have 30. He only has 15 of them. And he is going to be working on the chicken coop. And this is what emotional intelligence is all about. It's being able to manage your emotions. It's being able to help and seek and pay attention and manage the emotions of your spouse. It's being able to come together, not running away from conflict, but using this as an opportunity for connection. And you know what happened? What started off as conflict brought my parents closer together. You know why? Because now they were dreaming together. My mom says, okay, what do you want to do with these chickens? Well, to bike, right? My dad loves to bike, and he has what we call his little bike gang, okay? And so he's like, a lot of my bike friends says that they would love chicken eggs. And so, just as a hobby, just as something on the side, I figured we could maybe sell some chicken eggs to them. My mom's like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Remember, I'm not flexible. I'm not going to clean up chicken poop, but whenever I go out, I need connection. And together, my mother and father are now grandparents to chickens. And it's incredible, right? They enjoy River and Rita. Now they're enjoying chickens. And so some things that I want to point out to you, the flexible and inflexible circle, do that at your home, right? Just draw 2 little circles, a smaller one and then a bigger one. And where you are inflexible, write that down. And where you are flexible, write that down. And go back and forth. Don't avoid conflict. Use conflict as an opportunity to create greater intimacy or closeness in your marriage. Now, oh man, I have such a great time with husbands because, they say pretty funny and incredible things. And so there was a few more husbands, and we were all talking. I was talking to some of my father's bike gang, right? And they're all like, oh man, tell Amanda what you did. Tell Amanda what you did. And I said, oh God, here you go. Like, what did you do? And he's like, well, our friend, he's been biking with us for several weeks now, but his wife doesn't know. And I said, what do you mean his wife doesn't know? Well, because what he does is he'll bike with us after work, and then when he gets home, he'll take off his bike clothes, put back on his work clothes, and then walk into the house. So his wife has no idea. And I said, what in the world? I said, what are you doing now? How long are you going to keep this up. He was like my dad, right? Trying to create an underground railroad for his chickens. I said, why are you doing it? I says, oh, I have to do that because she's going to lose it. I said, well, why is she going to lose it? You're biking, you're enjoying your friends. She goes, well, she's going to lose it because she's on her period this week. And he's like, I'm going to wait for next week. And so listen, wives, our husbands at times are scared. Literally, they're scared, like little children. They're scared to approach us with certain things because they're scared of our reaction. And I get it why. Sometimes your husband will approach you with insane, out of this world, nonsensical things. But in that moment, just say, oh, honey, we'll talk about it later, right? You know, fake it till you make it face. Oh, we'll talk about it later. Go to your room, find a pillow, scream in it, calm yourself down, raise your emotional intelligence, and then figure out how you're going to deal and how you're going to compromise. You know, I remember Renee is always trying to buy and sell something. He likes to work with his hands, and so he'll buy an ATV that's run down, beat down, not working. He'll buy it for very low. He'll fix it up. He'll change this. He'll paint this. He'll do all this stuff to it, and then before and afters, right? And then he'll buy something very cheap. He'll fix it, and then he'll sell it for a profit. He loves doing that. Well, right when we moved into the ranch, we needed a lawnmower. I don't know, what is this, 4 years ago, Renee? You've been here?
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 years ago? And he's going to buy this lawnmower. Well, Renee is good with cars and ATVs and all these little things, but lawnmower was kind of like out of his wheelhouse. It wasn't something that he was used to using, comfortable using, whatever. And so he didn't know all that there was to know. Well, he took a friend to look over this lawnmower with, and it was nighttime, which Renee doesn't really love, because if you know Renee, he wants to do a morning deal. He wants to do all his exhaustive research. I always said, if you want to buy something, send it to Renee. 3 months later, after he's exhausted all of his research, he's going to tell you, oh, you should get it. At that point, you probably won't want it anymore, but then you are certain you are going to get a good deal. So this is the guy that I'm married to. So whenever Renee says, I'm going to buy something, I'm saying, like, Lord, buy it already, because I know he just spent the last year researching it. Well, we needed a lawnmower. He didn't have enough time. He trusted in his friend. He went, and they bought a lemon. Okay, this lawnmower was no good. It was pricey. It was no good, and he just felt like he let us down because it was already super expensive. We didn't have this money. Now we had to add more money to buy it, and as you can imagine, he was very scared, afraid, disappointed, ashamed to come and tell me this. These are the moments, wives. So Renee came to me and said, hey, I did an awful deal. Like, I blew it. I lost all our money. Now I don't have money to buy another one. I don't know how much it's going to take to fix. The motor is shot. We're going to have to do a motor. It was a whole thing. Renee was already feeling bad. And I could have been like, oh, I told you, da-da-da-da-da, or you shouldn't have gone with this friend, da-da-da-da. He was just as upset as I was that he lost his money. And this is what I'm saying, wives. There's a verse in the Bible that says this. We can come boldly to the throne of grace, meaning you and I, sinners, awful sinners, can come boldly to the throne of grace where Jesus is sitting, and we can find mercy and grace and assurance in our time of need. When we come to Jesus, he doesn't reject us, he doesn't condemn us, he doesn't judge us, he receives us. Wives, we need to be like Jesus to our husbands. When our husbands come with an issue, with a problem, with a situation, let's try to offer mercy and grace. And husbands, do the same with your wives. When someone has messed up, they're already feeling bad. They're being their biggest critic. I know Renee was his biggest critic. But him coming to me, him boldly coming to me, it made me feel, wow, my husband trusts me right now that I am going to be his anchor, that I am going to be his safe haven, that I am going to be the one who sort of says, hey, don't worry, we're going to figure it out. And guess what? We did figure it out. Thank God that God gave us great neighbors, and he spent, 6 months, right? He would spend the next 6 months jumping over the fence to our neighbor Mike's house. Incredible man, incredible help. And they just fixed that engine, and Renee knows that machine better than anyone else. And actually, it was a learning experience. So now he will never do that again. So use these mess-ups, not to create conflict. But if it leads to conflict, don't worry. Walk through it together, hand in hand, and say, may this conflict produce greater connection in our marriage. Remember Jacob? Jacob, he wrestled with God. And through his wrestling with God. At night, he felt like a failure. He felt like a loser. He felt like ashamed. And he was scared to death that he was going to meet his brother Esau, and Esau was out to kill him. Why? Because Jacob stole what was not his from his brother. So he thought, man, I've been hiding out all these years, but now is my time. My brother's going to kill me. And he knew he could, because Esau was Esau, and Jacob, he wasn't nearly as, bicep built as his brother. And he wrestles with God. He enters into, we can call it conflict. They're going back and forth. They're wrestling there. But it was through this experience, through this wrestling, that Jacob's name is changed to Israel. And it was in this moment that a man who knew of God now knew God. Intimacy was cultivated through the wrestling with God, and Jacob became a converted man. Not a man who had a checklist Christianity, not a man who had behavior modifications, but a man who experienced heart transformation. Why? Through wrestling. Wrestle together. Wrestle with each other. Don't give up on each other, and do not leave until, like Jacob says, I will not let you go until you bless me. You tell your wife, you tell your husband, I will not let you go until we gain victory over this conflict, until we gain connection in this conflict. And that's exactly what is my prayer for you here tonight. Conflicts can lead to greater intimacy, to greater connection, if we will allow it. Men, don't run away from conflict. And wives, when they come to you, you already know they're scared half to death about how they're going to deal with your emotions. And so be a safe haven. Think about what you're going to say. Don't just merely say it. Remember, as I always say, what you say is important, but how you say is important. Don't listen to respond, but listen to listen. You don't have to engage in that moment. Sleep on it. Pray on it. And then come back together and use this conflict for the honor and glory of God. Use it for the honor and glory of God. I want to end with a small story. It's found in Exodus 32, and it's when God approaches Moses. And he says, listen, Moses, you are here on Mount Sinai, and I am about to hand you the 10 Commandments. Well, the Israelites are at the bottom of the mountain, and they've made a golden calf, and they are prostrating themselves. They are worshiping this golden calf. And Moses is in disbelief. And God says, listen, justice demands that I obliterate these people. Why? Because they have chosen to worship another God, and so they have forfeited my protection. I don't want to destroy them. I don't want to kill them, but they've removed themselves from my protection. God approaches Moses with this challenge. And Moses looks to God and says, no. And Moses literally says this to God: you will repent from this evil. You will not destroy these people. He says, God, you can't destroy them, because if you do, the heathens, the pagans, will say, look at this God. This God delivers the Israelites from Egypt only to bring them to the desert and then obliterate them in the desert. And he says, God, don't do that, because people will misinterpret your character. This is not who you are. And so Moses, look at this, Moses wrestles with God. Moses says, God, you will not do this. You will not destroy them. And God even tells Moses, listen, Moses, I'm going to destroy them, and I'll make of you a great nation. And Moses says, no, you cannot do this, because people will misunderstand your character, and you are a God of love, of mercy, and of justice. Don't lose this. This story, and listen, Moses tells God to repent, and it says that God repented, and God did not destroy the Israelites because of the intercessory prayers of Moses. This is not the story of a man who was somehow nicer than God. Impossible. But this is a story of God trusting that Moses would do the right thing in this situation. God comes to Moses with a challenge, with a problem. He says, Moses, justice demands that I destroy these Israelites. However, Moses, if you intercede through the power of your prayers, I can bring mercy and grace and forgiveness. God knew the heart of Moses, that Moses would know how to deal with this situation. Could it be that you and I, that when our spouses come to us, the way God came to Moses, that we would deal with it in the right way? That we would bring mercy and grace and forgiveness and understanding the same way that God expected Moses to do for the Israelites? Let me read this commentary for you. It says this. Speaking of this situation, an author by the name of Ellen White, she says this: when God approaches Moses saying, "Let me alone that I may consume them." These were the words of God. If God had purpose to destroy Israel, who could plead for them? This is the question. Who was going to plead for the one that God wanted to destroy? And then she continues, how few would have left the sinners to their fate. Remember, it wasn't Moses' fault. Israel chose their fate. They chose their destiny. Their bad habit of worshiping a lowercase g God and burden and sacrifice. Remember, these people were missing. It was probably a good idea. This was awesome that it already happened because, yes, destroy these wicked people and make of me a great nation. Look what it says. But Moses discerned ground for hope where there appeared only discouragement and wrath. God comes to Moses and offers him an easier position, a position of honor, and he would destroy the Israelites. But Moses understood that when God was approaching him, it was because God trusted that Moses had the heart of God. That Moses would plead and intercede, that Moses would enter into conflict to bring greater connection and greater intimacy. The words of God to Moses, "Let me alone." Moses, look at this, Moses understood not to forbid, but to encourage intercession, implying that nothing but the prayers of Moses could save Israel, but that if thus entreated, God would spare his people. In other words, God was saying, Moses, intercede. Moses, plead with me. Moses, enter into conflict with me. Moses, remind me of my character. Moses, pray for these people that I might spare them, because justice demands destruction. But your prayers will open the floodgates for mercy and grace and forgiveness. Oh, man. Could it be that right now, your husband, your wife, they are running away from you because they are scared? They are so scared to tell you what they're going through because they're scared of your reaction. They're scared about how you're going to handle this. Allow for your spouse to come boldly to you because they know that in you they will find mercy and assurance in their time of great need. Allow for the conflicts in your marriage to produce greater intimacy, greater connection. Because when we wrestle with God as did Jacob, when we wrestle with God as did Moses, oh man, our relationships will become abundant. Listen, that's what I have for you tonight, folks. I hope it was helpful to you. I pray it was helpful to you. Please put it to practice. And then send me DMs. Let me know if it helped you in any way. I sure hope it does. In fact, I know that it will. Don't avoid conflict. Enter into it with the presence of God and just watch. Because maybe like my mom and dad, you will be the grandparents of 30 chickens. I'll send you guys some chicken pictures later. I'll see you guys next time.